This is an odd turn, and not really the kind of story I'd expect to cover, at least when I first heard who the parties were involved in it. I didn't think it would have anything to do with politics or really my realm of expertise, until I found out what the actual beef was over. You see, two of the world's biggest comedians right now, Bill Burr, who you'll know from his entire comedy career and his stint in acting. He's been in The Mandalorian, he's been in Breaking Bad, and a lot of other things as well, but those are like two really big roles he did that you will recognize him in immediately. You know, Bill Burr's a big deal. He's been on Rogan many times. He's considered one of the most respectable, hard-ass comedians out there. He's a hard guy to interview. If he doesn't like you, he's got sort of a reputation for that. There's not many other ways I can describe him than that, right? And he's known to be quite funny, edgy, not right-wing edgy, but like, he doesn't give a fuck who gets offended by what he says, and what he has to say and how offensive it is not reflective of his politics, really, outside of when he rants about conservatives, which he does. Politically, I agree with Bill Burr. You know, even if he's on, like, the kind of, I guess what you would consider more conservative-coded, kind of edgy vibe, you know what I mean? And then on the other side of this drama, you've got Shane Gillis, who originally got big on SNL and was fired, if I remember correctly, due to some edgy humor he'd done. He later blew up online, becoming a massive figure off the same kind of humor that got him fired from SNL, and he got so big they brought him in as, like, the head guy of Saturday Night Live. And so Shane Gillis basically went from canceled, fired from SNL, to the head, like, main guy of SNL because he got so popular off of the, like, edgy, sort of borderline right-wing comedy that he got canceled for. He since did a lot to push for Trump to get into office. He was really big on the Trump train, really helped to get, well, actually, no, he wasn't that big on Trump. I'm kind of confusing him with Theo Von there, my bad. I actually don't know if he was super big on the Trump train, but he's known for being edgy too. You know, these are two pretty edgy kind of, you know, politically unaffiliated creators, right? Which is why it's interesting that they're having beef right now over politics. For those of you guys that don't know, Saudi Arabia is an evil country and does not get enough shit from the left. Outside of all of the weird, shady bullshit they do with their royal family, or the, you know, murdering of people like Jamal Khashoggi, who got butchered and stuffed into bags in, I believe it was the consulate, or no, was it an embassy or consulate? I forget the exact term. Yeah, real crazy shit. They had ties to 9/11. Like, they are a, like, slave state, basically. Like, they literally practice a caste system of slavery. It's pretty fucked up. Like, the idea of supporting Saudi Arabia in any way is quite problematic. In the same way that, like, if you went to do some kind of morale booster show for IDF troops, it would be monstrous. Or if you did a similar thing for, like, Russian troops invading Ukraine, it would be a monstrous thing to do. And there's a lot of, like, it would be very clearly a shameless and sellout thing to do, one might argue. Now, for those that don't know, Saudi Arabia, despite all of these horrible things in their past, they're trying to kind of whitewash their history. They're trying to sugarcoat things. One of their biggest moves they've made in this respect is buying out sports leagues. Notably, like, all of esports is now owned by Saudi Arabia. If you are watching or paying to see esports in any way, you are probably giving money to Saudi Arabia. The rest of it is bought and owned by China. So China and Saudi Arabia basically divvied up and own the esports industry. I think Korea might own a little bit too, South Korea, but it's really the big two there are Saudi Arabia and China. A lot of other sports as well are being bought out by Saudi Arabia. I think, like, UFC, if I'm not mistaken, is, like, Saudi Arabia is really trying to get its fingers in there, all with the purpose of, well, if you have to go to Saudi Arabia to witness these big sports events, whether it be esports or boxing or UFC or whatever it may be, MMA, whatever you're watching, if you have to go to Saudi Arabia and be there for it, you're going to become more softened to the idea of the country. It's the same reason that Israel will literally pay to give you an all-expenses-paid trip to do, like, a propaganda tour of Israel. They've done this for millions, but they've done this for thousands of people at least, like, particularly internet influencers. They've given money to do tours of Israel and to do it as, like, a travel vlog, but also advertisement for how great Israel is. Saudi Arabia is taking the same path. They're taking the same path, and a big part of this is hosting one of the biggest comedy shows ever in their country, which is, and of course, imposing upon those comedians, including Bill Burr, one of the biggest comedians that'll be at this event, that they are not allowed to say anything that in any way, shape, or form criticizes or makes fun of the state or government of Saudi Arabia. These massive comedians are doing a government-sponsored, censored Saudi Arabia live show. Or I guess comedy show. And hilariously, many of these comedians have been out there talking about how censorship is ruining comedy, but they're taking millions of dollars in order to do a highly censored comedy show, because all they really care about is money. It was never about the principle of censorship at the end of the day. If you don't believe me, let's watch Philip DeFranco's breakdown of the situation, because it's crazier than even I summarized.
Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. You daily dive into the news, and with it being Monday, there is a lot we have to talk about today, starting with this. Mark Maron, Shane Gillis, and Zach Woods are slamming this comedy festival in Saudi Arabia that a bunch of their fellow stand-ups are participating in.
Yeah, to be fair, and this is the part of it that I kind of left out, Shane Gillis and a handful of other comedians are the good guys in this story. They're the ones calling out the kind of shameless sellout comedians that decided to cuck themselves to the state of Saudi Arabia. Like, it's wild too, because, like, Saudi Arabia literally financially backed the terror group that did 9/11. It's like, it's fucking crazy to be doing a propaganda comedy show for Saudi Arabia as an American. There might be nothing more American. Yemen, Saudi Arabia was involved too, you know that, right? That's like part of what's so fucked up about how America is like super buddy-buddy with Saudi Arabia just because like oil and shit now, is because Saudi Arabia were actually one of the parties behind 9/11 that America refused to admit was behind 9/11 because it would fuck up our dealings within the oil industry and global trade and whatnot. Like, we just totally let Saudi Arabia slide for that shit.
And we should talk about it, because it's called the Riyadh Comedy Festival. It kicked off on Friday. It lasts through October 9th, and it has a massive lineup. You've got Pete Davidson, Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Whitney Cummings, Andrew Schultz, and Flagrant, Kevin.
Massive figures. This is easily going to be... This might be the biggest comedy festival that's ever happened. Like, ever. Which would make sense, because who could pay for all these comedians more than the literal Saudi royal government, royal family or whatever. By the way, just a quick heads up, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see more from me and support me so that I can make more content, then consider dropping a like, a comment, and a hype on this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Every like and comment makes a chud want to vomit. Let's get back to it.
Hart, Tom Segura, and the list just goes on and on. You know, some have already gone on stage, some they still have sets upcoming, but they're all facing some backlash right now. Because Saudi Arabia, as you hopefully know, for quite a while has been criticized for its human rights abuses, like arresting journalists, exploited labor, executions for crimes like drug offenses, and way more.
Butchering people.
Like, it's literally about to be the anniversary of when Mohammed Bonesaw is believed to have killed Jamal Khashoggi. And in fact, just earlier this year, the nation's top court there executed a journalist who had been behind bars for over 7 years. And so with all this, last week you had Human Rights Watch issuing a statement.
Dude, certain things just kind of stick to your brain for no goddamn reason, and one of those things for me is the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. I don't know why, but everything from his name to that entire story just stuck with me, and I remember everything about it. I was like in the car with my uncle. I was like in the passenger seat of his truck. I was in the front seat. We were just chatting, and my uncle always listens to NPR, like 99% of the time while he's driving, he's listening to NPR. So we're just sitting there listening to NPR, and this story was like fresh off the presses. And so it was just me and my uncle sitting in the car listening to NPR, and they just explained this whole situation, and that just kind of stuck with me. It became a bit of a brainworm, this whole story, and I've oddly remembered a lot of its details, despite it being like, you know, many years now since it happened.
They've been arguing that the Saudi government is using the festival, quote, to deflect attention from its brutal repression of free speech and other pervasive human rights violations. And you had them then urging the—
Wait, is that real? Legolas, thank you for the $5. Says Pete Davidson getting paid by the same government that killed his dad is incredibly cucked. Oh yeah, because his dad died in 9/11. That was a thing. I forgot about that. Good point, Legolas. That is really weird.
Performers to use their time at the festival to urge Saudi leaders to free unjustly detained journalists and activists so they're not laundering the government's reputation. Right, but also,
unfortunately, they're not allowed to.
It's not just activists and nonprofits who are slamming comedians. I mean, you have tons of other comedians also speaking out. You recently had comedian Mark Maron speaking on this.
I mean, the same guy that's going to pay them is the same guy that paid that guy to bonesaw Jamal Khashoggi and put him in a suitcase. But don't let that stop the yucks. It's going to be a good time. Full disclosure, I was not asked.
But by the way, the right is already defending the Saudi Arabia live show, comedy show. Specifically, The Quartering. When I looked this up, The Quartering's video about this came up, and his framing of this is that Bill Burr's woke friends are betraying him. That is the framing that The Quartering and other right-wing grifters are pushing this with. They're unironically defending Saudi Arabia. Like, I know when you think about it for long enough, that sounds silly, but the right doesn't actually believe in anything. None of what they believe is consistent, unless the only consistency is hate.
To perform at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, so it's kind of easy for me to take the high road on this one.
And actually, this whole thing goes back to July when you had comedian Shane Gillis saying he was offered the chance to perform in Saudi Arabia, but
I think I'm gonna pass.
Yeah. For the is it for the troops?
Not for the troops.
What?
It's for the Saudis.
For the Saudi princes?
Yeah, and everyone's like, yeah, you should do it. Everyone's doing it. It's like, for Saudis?
Yeah.
Weren't those the...
You can really tell, by the way, that the logic all these comedians are using is, wow, look at all the other comedians doing it. They can't cancel all of us. Like, they're literally acting like a school of fish. They're engaging in schooling behavior. Like, if there's just too many of them, all of them, like, all the biggest comedians are doing this, and you're mad about it, you can't, like, cancel all of the biggest comedians in the world right now, barring, like, Shane Gillis and, like, a handful of other people. I'm surprised Joe Rogan's not. Though, you know what? To be fair, for all of Joe Rogan's faults, he was around for 9/11. Like, Joe Rogan does not find 9/11 funny. He doesn't find conspiracy theories about 9/11 funny. He doesn't find jokes about 9/11 funny. Shane Gillis learned that himself the hard way. Look up that clip if you want a real awkward, cringy moment. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Rogan turned it down. For one, he has plenty of money. And two, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he would just be like, no, I'm not doing a, like, comedy show for the Saudi government. I think he knows enough and was around for enough and, like, is emotionally attached to enough that he would not buckle on that. I bet they invited him and he turned it down. I would bet body parts that happened.
9/11 guys?
And then Gillis later said that organizers doubled his pay offer, but he refused this significant amount of money so he could take a principled stand. Also, as far as like how much people were actually making for this, you had comedian Tim Dillon previously saying that he was going to do the fest because he was going to get $375,000 for doing one show. Right? He also claimed that some performers were offered as much as $1.6 million. But then Saudi—
Mind you, stand-up comedy is not like big money, okay? You gotta be a big deal in the world of stand-up comedy to make money. And the stand-up stuff doesn't even make that much. Like, yeah, you sell tickets and stuff, but man, ticket sales are not... Like, unless we're talking like Taylor Swift Eras Tour type shit, like, ticket sales are not that profitable. Hell, I don't even think the Eras Tour is profitable because Taylor Swift, like specifically sets the prices on the tickets to be pretty damn affordable. At least in relation to other big artists in their concerts. So, like, yeah, I don't think, like, stand-up really pays that much, which is why, like, numbers like 300K to $1 million to a stand-up comedian, even one who everyone knows the name of, those are big numbers. Usually the big breaks these comedians get is when they get to be on TV. When they get to be in a movie or a TV show, that's when they get an actual, like, substantial payout. And if they're a big known comedian, then they can reasonably ask for a larger, salary or whatever they get paid being in a show or a movie.
Arabia apparently fired him from the gig over jokes that he made about forced labor in the country. And on that note, you had comedian Atsuko Okatsuka saying that she was offered the festival but turned it down and claimed that the gig came with a bunch of content restrictions. And with that, sharing a screenshot showing that artists aren't allowed to prepare material critical of Saudi Arabia, its royal family, or its government.
Literally leaking undeniable evidence here that the Saudi Arabian government is in fact controlling what these comedians can say during the show.
Where they're then adding a lot of the you can't say anything anymore comedians are doing the festival. They had to adhere to censorship rules. And, as all of this is playing out, we've seen some of the performers from the lineup defending their choice to go. Pete Davidson recently went on Theo Von's podcast and he said,
I've been getting a little bit of flack just because my dad died 9/11. So they're like, how could you possibly go there? I just, I get the routing and then I see.
It's not just go there. Come on, Pete Davidson. Don't be a dick. Get it? Don't be a dick about this, okay? Because people aren't mad at you because you're gonna go to Saudi Arabia. That going to Saudi Arabia is not a sin. Doing a live show or a comedy show put on by the Saudi Arabian government, taking money to do a comedy show where you are banned from criticizing said government, that said comedy show is being done to clean the reputation of Saudi Arabia so they can more easily escape the consequences of their past actions, including bankrolling the guys who killed your dad. You are getting paid by the guys who paid the guys to kill your dad. That is what happened here. That's what's going on.
See the number and I go, I'll go.
Right, and so with all this, it's not surprising that the general backlash that we've seen are people calling them sellouts. Right, some saying they think it's ironic that some of the sort of free speech warriors are among the comedians performing in a country slam for repressing free speech. If you go to the comments of the top performers' Instagrams, you can see their fans calling them out. And then, with this, as far as my opinion on the matter, I'm conflicted because there's a number of people involved in this that I'm like, okay, I'm not surprised. Right, a number of them are bag chaser bullshit artists that I was like, yeah, okay. And then also whether you love them or
Andrew Schultz, for instance, maybe one of the most soulless, and Andrew Schultz is the Mr. Beast of comedy. Not in that he's the number one, but in that he is kind of a symptom of comedy, modern day stand-up culture just getting worse.
hate him. You could look to people like Kevin Hart and you're like, oh, that motherfucker never saw a check that he didn't want to cash. Kevin Hart would MC judicial amputations as long as it had enough zeros. And so I found myself more surprised, and I hate using the word disappointed because it's not like I'm his fucking daddy, but seeing Bill Burr there. And so overall with this, I end up just kind of wanting to know, what were any of the people involved here, one. As well as,
the Bill Burr one is rough. Bill Burr's the kind of comedian that kind of operates on a moral high horse, for lack of a better term. Bill Burr's zingers and his comedy hits because, Bill Burr feels like he is above those that he's criticizing, right? After this, I will never feel like Bill Burr is above anyone he's criticizing. Because at the end of the day, whatever his principles are, if you offered him a fat enough check, he would just throw him out the window. And he's done it. Unless he goes on stage and does a long diatribe about the evils of Saudi Arabia and pulls the biggest bait and switch ever, which would be on brand for Bill Burr, I will be immensely disappointed. It would be genuinely legendary, though, if Bill Burr went on stage and said, "Hey, guess what, everybody? The Saudi Arabian government, they told me a bunch of stuff I couldn't say. So I'm gonna say all that shit now. For one, who remembers when these fuckers killed Jamal Khashoggi? They butchered that guy. Who remembers that? That happened here. The guys who put this show together did that." I'm not, if he did something like that, where if he went on stage and just started roasting the organizers once he was on the platform, my respect would be restored. But I have a sneaking suspicion that's not the way this is going.
What were any of the people that were involved in the whitewashing that we've seen of Saudi Arabia and other aspects thinking. And I think the closest thing that we've gotten to that was Nimesh Patel was previously involved in this, and he ended up dropping out. He also then put out a what felt like a passive-aggressive TikTok where he seemed to feel like he was the victim of this situation, whereas he was also then trying to like make this false equivalency comparison to the United States and Saudi Arabia. And then in a follow-up video he made after that, that was fucked up because he said if he had gone, it would have been essentially like 20% of the money that he would have made that year. And he shows a screenshot of his back and forth with his people where he's like, hey, I wouldn't do this thing if Netanyahu asked me. It feels like a moral thing. But then also in the same video, he was like, but if it was also like generational wealth, like it was money that would genuinely.
Remember, these comedians, even the really successful ones, aren't that wealthy. It isn't that hard to like pull together 20 million and get the world's biggest comedians all together in your like horror nation in order to get them to do like sweeping for your country. Like, it's not that hard. You don't need that much money. Like, these people's lives would be changed by a payout of like a few $100,000 in a lot of cases.
Change my life, I'd still probably do it. And so I don't know, I think for the rest of them, it's probably just a mixed bag of I don't care about the controversy, I'm just going for that bag. Maybe they're thinking safety in numbers, or I don't know. But hey, as this comedy festival continues to move along, I gotta ask you, like, what are your thoughts around any of this? But then quickly, next up,
like, this shit is really interesting, though, because, like, Saudi Arabia and its attempts to sugarcoat its own history and sweep its own history are pretty wild. Like, Saudi Arabia is a nightmare of a country. There are a lot of countries like that. I've ranted about the United Arab Emirates as well, which is, like, really hardcore on the slavery stuff. Like, they basically are a social media influencer nation. Like, if a country could be a social media influencer, then Dubai is that country. But, like, everything under the surface is so, like, dark and decrepit and evil, and the human rights abuses are, like, rife. And a lot of people don't know this, you know? Qatar is quite bad too. That was a big focus when the Olympics happened there, because, or no, was it the World Cup or the Olympics? I forget. But yeah. Qatar literally used slavery to build the stadiums for that event. And it was a big thing. Yeah. It was the World Cup. Okay, yeah. It was the World Cup. That's that's like the world's biggest sports event, right? Maybe besides the Olympics. I think. No, I feel like if I were to bet, the World Cup would have to be the world's largest sporting event, right? Because soccer is the world's largest sport. And the World Cup is basically the world Super Bowl of soccer. Yeah, it is the world. Okay, so yeah, there are a lot of fucked up things happening right now where the world of sports being so overwhelmingly, unanimously, like, beloved by the world over, evil countries with lots of money. When I say evil countries, I mean their governments are evil, not like the people of the countries, obviously. But evil countries are buying out these industries and using the entertainment to whitewash and build up acceptance for their country's human rights abuses. Like, even if they are actively practicing slavery, well, everyone wants to go and see the World Cup, so, you know, don't want to make too much of a fuss about it, right? What an awful era we live in. This isn't the first time we've talked about something relating to this either. I did a segment maybe a year ago maybe, you can go back and watch if you want to, about how Saudi Arabia is buying up esports. So if that interests you, and you probably would find that interesting if you watch this far, then you should go check that out. It's on my channel. But of course, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way whatsoever, then please consider leaving a like and a comment. Whether you're watching right now when I'm live or in the future when this goes out as a video, it really does help a lot. Like, comment, and hype to make a conservative cry. We're figuring out a good rhyme. We're working on it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more from me. Follow my social medias linked down below if you want to see more from me on other platforms. And if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xander Hall merchandise through the Streamlabs link down below. Regardless of how you support me, though, thank you so much for watching, as always, and have a good one.